So when you are in a state of fight or flight, in a regular state, and that's your every day, that's the thing that you're just normally used to. What happens is you start breathing faster just naturally because you're in that state.
Right.
When you start breathing faster, you're sending a signal to the autonomic nervous system. Because of that breathing, it is that bottom up or top down in this case signal. And that signal says, hey, I'm in a state of fight or flight. And then your autonomic nervous system says, oh my God, we must be in more danger than I even thought. And so it starts to ratchet up things. It starts to ratchet up this state of fight or flight. And before you know it, you're freaking out. You're having panic attacks. You're just in a state of constant anxiety.
It's going to be a really neat behind the scenes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird.
Because something always magical happens.
Wait, what? Did you just make that up? Hey, it's Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert. Listen each week as I talk with someone new. The topics are as ADD as I am, but they'll inspire you to stay curious and grow.
Hey, Curiositors, it's me, Meredith. This episode in my mental health series is solution-oriented, but the problem is one that we all face. It's the condition of the modern-day human. My goal for this episode is that it gives you an always-with-you tool in your mental health tool belt: breathing. Most people breathe twice as much as they need to, which actually tells your autonomic nervous system to run. And then this can cause a lot of problems, including sexual dysfunction, lowered immune system, and poor judgment when responding to Karens on social media. My guest talks in plain and comical language about how you can trick your body into believing that this year hasn't been a dumpster fire. He even talks about the effect wearing a mask has on your breathing pattern. Oh yes, we went there. So if you feel like your baseline stress level is rising and you want to become more resilient, this is a great episode for you. Towards the end, he even walks us through a simple breathing technique. We also talk a lot about parasympathetic and sympathetic states. So if this is new lingo to you, just remember P is for peace. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. And S is for stress. Sympathetic is fight or flight. He did change his branding since we recorded this, so be sure to check out the episode description. It pops up when you touch the episode title on your phone, or just search Jesse Coomer. Okay, Curiositors, meet Jesse Coomer. The most fundamental tool in the mental health tool belt: breathwork. Wait, don't leave. This episode promises not to be for white women wearing a lot of bracelets. In fact, my next guest is a lumberjack-looking man who's an English professor from Indiana. He's also the author of the newly released book, A Practical Guide to Breathwork. His personal discovery of breathwork in 2014 has helped him transform the inner chaos of anxiety and depression, and he has since become one of the first American certified Wim Hof instructors. Today, he's going to offer hope for the modern human condition of caffeinate, work, repeat with what he calls the ultimate performance-enhancing drug. Fellow Midwesterner, voice of practicality, once ate ice cream for breakfast for 2 years, Jesse Coomer.
Yeah, I don't claim to be a master of moderation. I'm still working on that.
Well, that's
yeah, and literally at one point, during that 2 years of it's like every morning, of course, it's a terrible idea. I read an article about how ice cream is the ultimate breakfast, and I read it many years after doing this ridiculous routine. And I can tell you that is absolutely a lie. The problem is that once you start, the next morning you're like, what should I have for breakfast? And you're like, but I had a terrible sugar crash. It was terrible. But you know what? It really sounds good though right now. And it never doesn't sound good. It's always going to sound good to you. Well, maybe I guess I could have a bowl of ice cream for breakfast. Okay. All right. That was during undergrad. And I got to school just as the sugar crash was happening pretty much every day. So,
well, we were living parallel experiences then, because I was a soccer goalie, and the more space I took up in the soccer goal it was like the better.
Yeah.
So I thought, and I was obsessed with being tall. And so every time my clothes didn't fit, I thought I was getting taller.
Oh, that's
no, and it gets
oh,
better.
how cruel.
Oh yeah, I have very large stretch marks on the sides of my hips, and I thought they were from diving to catch a ball in the goal, like during a soccer game. I didn't know what stretch marks were. And I was like, Mom, check out these cool marks I got. I'm so badass.
I love your attitude, though. I gotta say, it's just like everything is going my way.
Yeah. I'm
it's
taller.
Like, these aren't because I'm gaining excessive amounts of weight. They must be because I'm rocking it on the field.
I mean, I was a confident I wasn't. But in that area, I was oblivious, I think is the word. Maybe confidence is a stretch. But yeah, I could still probably use breath work or whatever other things that are out there to help with the moderation thing. Because homegirl still has a sweet tooth. And when you said ice cream for breakfast, I was all about it. So as far as like manipulating our behavior and how we feel, so breath work. So
yeah, well, and really, this is the modern human condition.
Yeah,
really, because when it comes down to it, our brains are programmed to crave these things, and it's something that there's. Whenever you want to sit down and eat potato chips and ice cream all day, there's nothing wrong with you. That's some biology, and your brain is wired for that. But I don't advise it.
Right. Yeah. So how does manipulating our breathing affect our breathing patterns? How does that scientifically affect how we feel? How does that change that?
You ready to nerd out a little bit?
I'm so ready.
Okay, let's nerd.
Okay, wait, I got to push up my imaginary nerd glasses. Okay, now
yes, there it is. Push them up. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm ready.
Well, first of all, when it comes to our body and mind, about 70% of all of our bodily processes are governed by what is called the autonomic nervous system, and this is a very useful system. It was especially useful for early humans because it allows us to utilize energy, and it allows us to utilize blood flow in a way that's best for our situation. And when we were in the Neolithic era, for ancient man, we were usually either in a place where we were either about to try to kill something to eat it or avoid, being killed for the purpose of being eaten, or we were in a place where we were relaxing, actually eating, where we were able to heal, and we developed this autonomic nervous system, and it's something you see all throughout nature. All our mammal friends, and your dog, your cat, we all have this, and it governs these things automatically, which is really good because we don't have to remember to beat our heart, or we don't have to remember to increase glucose levels whenever we need energy. So these things are really, really helpful. Well, the way that the autonomic nervous system works for all creatures on the planet, except for us, but it mostly does this for us too. I'll get into that in a minute. But the way that it works is that we receive bottom-up signals. And what that means is we get environmental signals. So, I guess an extreme example would be if you saw a lion chasing after you, and this was, maybe a typical day for Neolithic man, a lion might be chasing after you, and suddenly your autonomic nervous system says, okay, we don't need so much to worry about digesting lunch because we might be lunch for this animal. Yeah. We need to run. So all of the blood would go to your skeletal muscles. You would have adrenaline, stress hormones, all these things that put you in a state of what we traditionally call the state of fight or flight. So great. We get out of that state, and hopefully we're not in that state for very long. We can't live in that state all the time. But eventually you get out of that state, and whenever your autonomic nervous system detects safety, okay, great. Let's switch back over so we can go back to digesting lunch. And we call that the rest and digest state. So, it's also known as the parasympathetic state, that rest and digest. And the sympathetic state is the fight or flight. So those are the two states that we pretty much find ourselves in. One is generally going to be dominant over the other. Well, there's this interesting miracle that happened when it comes to humans. And I don't know if you noticed, but we're the only ones that seem to be able to talk, right? And so this is something so far, unless, you're doing hallucinogens or something other than that. But that's a different episode.
Right.
But anyway, so we're the only ones that seem to be able to talk. And what happened was, whenever we developed, and this is the theory, right? When we developed the ability to speak, we also developed the ability to modulate our breathing. And if you think about what I'm doing right now, there's an enormous amount of modulation. I mean, it would be so weird if I couldn't control the breath and in and out. It would, I wouldn't even want to try it. It would sound so weird. So it's interesting. So this was normally something, and for all of the rest of the creatures on the planet, this is an automatic thing only. So they can't. So whenever you're walking your dog or hanging out with a cat or whatever, are you a cat person or a dog person?
Dogs.
Okay, cool.
Way.
Me too. Me too. My dog and I, whenever we're taking a walk, I'm the only one that can hold my breath. The dog can't do it. And whenever the dog switches over to panting through the mouth versus through the nose, he didn't even think about it. That was not something that was a conscious thing. We can do this. And it's all because we have this strange, this one, miracle of evolution, and call it whatever you want to call it. But we have this ability. And it's interesting that this is connected to the part of our brain that is very close to our emotion centers. And so what science has shown us, and this is something that I was very fortunate as I was writing this book, I made friends with a neurophysicist, neuroscientist, everything. I mean, just if there's something about the brain, Dr. Otto Music is the guy to talk to. And we went over a lot of the science, and I did an enormous amount of research as I went through this book over the past 5 years, as I've researched breath work, as I've taught it, as I've coached people. And what over decades of research we've found is that because we have this ability, we can send what we call a top-down signal through our autonomic nervous system to influence that state. So this is something that is really helpful to us because we live in a world that pretty much, like you said, caffeinate and all this stuff. We live in a very sympathetic dominant world where it's very common for a person to not even realize. And this is how it was for me. I didn't realize that I was in a state of fight or flight pretty much nonstop. Because if that's all if that's
right.
your everyday existence.
Yeah.
Right.
And everyone else is doing it.
Everyone else is doing it. Right. And the thing is not only is it normalized, it's kind of praised.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How you doing? Hard. I'm busy. Oh, good. Things must be good if you're busy.
Yeah, stay busy, stay caffeinated, and then whenever you can't get to, I know, so when you can't get to sleep, what do? Well, you take all these prescriptions, and then you get knocked unconscious, or maybe you go drinking that night and have a great American time, right? And then the next morning, just do it again and rock, and we go hard. And so this takes a terrible toll on our body because what happens is those stress hormones, they stay active, and that suppresses all the other things that we need to recover, to heal, and to live a healthy life. Here are just a few things that are controlled through the autonomic nervous system. And here in the United States, we have advertisements for prescription drugs for these things. But people in the other parts of the world are like, "You do what?" And we're like, "Yeah, So think about this. So your heart, so heart rate, blood pressure, things like that are affected by your autonomic nervous system. It's good for you to have a high heart rate and your blood pressure is going to be a little elevated when you are exercising, when you're incredibly active. That's good. There's a function for that. There's a reason. Things like digestion, blood sugar, things like, reproduction. Really, if you think about this is something where we have a lot of, we have a lot of these like Viagras and all these other pills out there. And what we have is just a bunch of dudes who can't chill and relax a little bit, right? I mean, it does happen to other guys. It's because we're all freaking out all the time. And this is one of those, I remember whenever I was dating and when I was, 20s and stuff like that, like girls would say, your hands are really cold. Well, just so everyone knows what that is, it's because you're freaking out. You're in a state of fight or flight. And you're getting an enormous amount of vasoconstriction. Mm-hmm. Well, when you're trying to get it on, you don't want vasoconstriction. You want some dilation, right? And that is something that we have to be in the right state for, right? So it is something that it affects us in all sorts of parts of our life. And I think the vast majority of us, we think about, well, I know I'm supposed to be able to relax. Yes. But why are you supposed to be able to relax? It's not just so that you can get to sleep, because that's why I think so many of us, we over caffeinate, is because it's like, well, I don't want to be tired. I want more energy. I want to be able to go do all the things I want to be able to do. I want to be able to focus and all these things. And I do too. But if you constantly stay in that state, and here's another thing that we've seen. I go down, I'm so excited about this, so stop me if I'm getting too down the rabbit hole.
Okay, I will.
But here's the thing. So when you are in a state of fight or flight, in a regular state, and that's your everyday, that's the thing that you're just normally used to, what happens is you start breathing faster just naturally because you're in that state.
Right.
When you start breathing faster, you're sending a signal to the autonomic nervous system. Because of that breathing, it is that bottom up or top down in this case, signal. And that signal says, hey, I'm in a state of fight or flight. And then your autonomic nervous system says, oh my God, we must be in more danger than I even thought. Mm-hmm. And so it starts to ratchet up things. It starts to ratchet up this state of fight or flight. And before you know it, you're freaking out. You're having panic attacks. You're just in a state of constant anxiety. And we see it all too often. And of course, our first thing to do is to do drugs and all these things, whether prescription or otherwise. And the interesting thing is we actually have it in our capacity to just take that breath and use it to shift back into the state, or at least decelerate that fight or flight state.
And how you talk a lot in your book about posture. How does daily posture of being on the computer and using smartphones affect our breathing?
Yeah, this is one that I think we all know the value of posture, or at least we're supposed to have, stand up straight. We know we're supposed to be like that, but what is it really doing to us, other than muscle dysfunctions and aches and pains in our body, right? Well, what happens is when you have what we call upper cross syndrome or even lower cross syndrome, a lot of people have both, because these are both dysfunctions that we get through sitting at a desk doing work on a computer. Now, don't get me wrong. I wrote this book sitting at a desk, typing on a computer. Right. So this is not something to feel bad about. It's not something that a person should be like, man, I need to stop this. We live in the world we live in.
Right. Well, and your point is not to escape. And your point is that we all are suffering from this. That's what we're trying to establish here, is that if you're listening to this now and you're like, nah, man, I'm good. No, bro, you ain't good. Like that's what we're trying to establish here, is that if you have bad posture, if you use your cell phone, if you use a computer, if you're a mouth breather at night, your autonomic nervous system could be in a constant sympathetic mode of operation, which could break down your body, causing mental health issues. And, there's been enough of that. Like we need some new tools for the new year. Enough. Which, let me switch gears to my other question, because it's so. Does wearing a mask for several hours at a time change our breathing pattern? And if it does, how can we counterbalance the effect?
Hey everyone, just a quick interruption to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. So I don't have kids, but I also want to tell you about It's Your magazine. They're a national family-centered publishing company with free parent magazines. They have parenting advice, events, and inspiration. I'm actually in a networking group with the publisher, and this guy is all about family. You can view a free magazine in cities in Texas, Oregon, Washington, and Florida by checking them out at itsyourmagazine.com. And insect. So I've always felt iffy about pesticides. Then the mosquitoes got so bad, I would get covered in them from walking from my house to the car. I called Insect, and to say I've been impressed is an understatement. When the treatment wasn't quite doing it, the owner actually came to my house. He found the breeding sites, identified the species of mosquito, and adjusted my treatment to that species. That's when I found out he's also a beekeeper, and pollinator issues are always top of mind. So if you're in the Florida Panhandle or Gulf Coast of Alabama, give him a call, ensec.net. Now back to the show.
Okay. So this is one of those questions that it just terrifies me to answer in the world that we live in, because it's a very polarizing question, and people have made it into something that's like, I can't believe you have an opinion on this. But here is the way that science works. Okay. So you put on your mask, and you start to notice that you're having a little trouble breathing. And the average person might think, well, that's because I'm not able to get enough oxygen through the mask. And that's not really what's happening. So what's happening when you're wearing a mask is that you're exhaling. When you exhale, there's a gas exchange in your lungs, first of all. And when you exhale, you're getting rid of carbon dioxide. And that's because in order to have cellular energy, we take in the oxygen. One of the byproducts of that is carbon dioxide. We exhale it. Well, carbon dioxide happens to be the thing that makes you feel the need to breathe. It is not a lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
So what you're going to feel is a greater need to breathe due to there's more carbon dioxide in your mask, right? You're breathing more carbon dioxide in. So your brain is receiving the signal that I need to breathe more. I'm not able to breathe. But in reality, I mean, you can take a look. You can just use a pulse oximeter. Your blood oxygen saturation is not being affected at all. And in fact, this is where wearing a mask, and people are going to think I'm crazy for saying this, but this is where wearing a mask actually can improve your breathing. It's like, what? I thought it was going to kill me. No, it's not going to kill you. Okay. So here's the thing. So that excess carbon dioxide, it's likely that you're an overbreather. If you're listening to this and you have ears and you're a human being, it's likely you're an overbreather. This is caused by many reasons, but one of them is our diet. If you eat a lot of sugar or things like that, if you are a mouth breather, if you have poor posture, there's a whole host. If you're a talker like I am, sadly enough, I found this out and I was like, wow, I have a low tolerance to CO2 at one point. Whenever I started to study this, it's like, that's interesting. So a low tolerance to CO2 means you're going to feel the need to breathe more. And the thing is that tolerance can be raised and it can be lowered. And it generally, the average person should have a higher tolerance than what they do have. And so like if you walk up a flight of steps or something like that and you're huffing and puffing, even athletes, I coach a lot of athletes that are just amazing. Like they have a resting heart rate of like 50. They're champions in their whatever respective sport, and they can't hold their breath for longer than just a few seconds. Wow. And what that is, it's not because they're unhealthy in any major way, but it is that they have a low tolerance to CO2. Now let's take this back to the mask wearing and all that. So if you wear your mask and you're just, for instance, I wear it whenever I go to my gym, the gym that I work out at, you have to wear it the whole time. And the way I look at it is, okay, yeah, I don't like wearing a mask because I wouldn't do it naturally. And it keeps me from making faces at people. And, I speak with my eyebrows enough, but normally I like to make smiles and things. But I look at it as a way for me to train my CO2 tolerance and increase that. Now, people with a higher CO2 tolerance generally are more resilient to stress. And there's an interesting correlation there. Okay. So if you're really sensitive to CO2, it's likely that you're very sensitive to stress just in general. And so when we raise your CO2 tolerance, we slow down your breathing because you don't feel that urge to breathe as quickly. You're in a parasympathetic state, that rest and digest state, more naturally because you're not huffing and puffing all the time. So in reality, there's a lot of arguments to be made about mask wearing, but there is really no logical argument against it when it comes to, am I getting enough oxygen? Because you are. In fact, this is an interesting thing about CO2. There's a thing called the Bohr effect. And if you don't have enough CO2, hemoglobin won't let loose of the oxygen molecules. So it's interesting. You need CO2. Most of the time we need higher levels of CO2 than what we have in order to actually take advantage of the oxygen that we've actually got in our system, so that oxygen will be released into our tissues where it's actually used for cellular energy.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely, I did not expect that. So for somebody who wears a mask all day, opportunity to check out your CO2 tolerance, which also is you have that test in your book. You have two tests in your book. I took them both. You'd be so proud.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Top of the class.
Top of the class. Yeah. I scored wildly differently on both of them, which was interesting. But so it's an opportunity it's like a training opportunity, basically. And then also it's an opportunity to be aware of your breath, because you said in your book, and you just said now, most people breathe twice as much as they need to, which tells your ANS crisis, a tiger is chasing you. So
that's right.
That's no bueno. So let's move on to some solutions for that, because we can't keep going like that. So you talk a lot in your book about techniques to, I don't think you used the word downregulate, or maybe you did, but to downregulate basically your autonomic nervous system, to be like, hey, ANS, chill, and everything's cool. So I imagine that there is a listener who will never, ever read my email, who will never, ever read your book, who will never, ever Google this. So I feel a very strong compulsion right now to ask you, if you're all right with it, to walk us through one easy to remember breathwork technique that someone can do when they are having anxiety. Because I think that is probably right now across the board, everyone's having it, right?
Absolutely. This is something that we'll go over what I would consider the easiest, but also one of the ones that I don't care if you're new or if you've been practicing breathwork for 50 years. This is one that you just can take with you the rest of your life, and it's very effective. And it's effective because it's going to stimulate your vagus nerve. And so the vagus nerve is one of the phrenic nerves. It is a very strong stimulator or a very strong signaler to the autonomic nervous system to go into a state of rest and digest or fight or flight. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use this to go into a state of rest and digest. And so what you'll want to do, let's suppose it's like, man, I had a stressful day, or I'm having a stressful day. I've got much of this day yet to be had. It's only Monday today, that kind of a thing, right? You realize this.
My cameraman is like nodding his head so enthusiastic. He's like, yes, bring it, please.
So here's what we're going to do. All right. So if you're listening to this, or if you're watching or whatever, what I want you to do is, the first step is to observe how you're breathing. Okay. So you can't switch into, there's no magic spell, right? There's no way to say, okay, and the thing is, if you go straight into a breathing technique, sometimes it causes you more stress than it's worth, because it's stressful to go into this augmented state whenever you're naturally in the other state. So we have to ease ourselves in. So naturally, just take a minute to kind of observe how you're breathing. And what we're going to do is we're going to shoot for inhaling and exhaling we're going to shoot for a ratio. So for every 1 second that you inhale, you're going to try to exhale for 2 seconds. So 1-to-2 ratio, inhale to exhale. And we're going to, however it was that you're started, you're going to switch to nasal breathing only. And so, okay, great. We're going to just do the nasal breathing. What this is going to do is going to, it makes your diaphragm more active. So you're going to naturally be breathing into the belly more. And that's the next step. You're going to try to breathe down into the belly, and you're going to try to not breathe into the chest. So just the belly. So nasal breathing into the belly. And we're going to, wherever it is you are, try to slowly adjust to a 1-to-2 ratio, inhale to exhale. Now, one way to do this and make it a little easier is to exhale through the mouth, because it just so happens that it's easier to kind of manage exhales through the mouth, because we can kind of purse our lips a little bit. But what we're going to do is slowly but surely, and it depends on where you are, but we're slowly but surely going to work our way to a 4-second inhale and an 8-second exhale. So 4-8 breathing. And what this is going to do is a lot of things, but specifically you're going to be breathing. You're going to be basically that every inhale and exhale. So every breath is taking 12 seconds to occur. And so just lengthening, even if it was an even inhale to exhale, just lengthening the breath is a signal to the autonomic nervous system. But since we're extending that exhale, we're sending an extra strong signal to the autonomic nervous system. You're safe. You can relax. It's not as bad as you think. It's going to be okay, right? If you want to accentuate this, you can smile. If you want to accentuate this even more, you can get into, you can lie down and prop up your legs. And we in the book, I actually have a picture of myself doing the 90-90. So that's a 90 degree at your hips, 90 degree at your knees. What this is doing is it's actually mimicking the fetal position. Getting into the fetal position is actually a really strong parasympathetic signal. But we don't want to do that when we're trying to do deep belly breathing, because that will restrict belly breathing. So 90-90 is generally as good as we can do.
And why does the smiling help?
Smiling is a natural vagal signal as well.
Really?
So yeah, it's one of those things. Actually, this was the first thing I ever learned as a kid. And I noticed that whenever I smiled, I just naturally felt better. And then later on, I found out that and kids called me Smiley when I was a kid, but I didn't care because I felt better. and so later on, I found out that whenever you smile, it's a vagal signal to your brain and to your autonomic nervous system. You can relax, things are better. You get all the signals. Oftentimes, if you can control it, right? If it's something that's controllable, but it's also automatic, oftentimes that means it's a doorway. And so if you can have a smile as a result of feeling good, you can send it back the same direction. So it's kind of the same principle as breath work. So a lot of these are little hacks. These are little hacks to accentuate your breath work practice. If you don't, a lot of times people don't smile whenever they're doing breath work. I smile a lot because I love how it makes me feel. And it's a decision that I make to be happy, right? Yeah. So, but all of these things work. And they've been studied, and these are not, we talk about woo-woo things, and I love I forget how many bracelets you have to have, these are things that, you don't even have to believe that they're going to work, because these are just so hardwired into our system. So basically, just to kind of recap this breathing technique, it's a 1-to-2 ratio, inhale to exhale. And if you can't quite get to 4-8, then, hey, guess what? 3-6. That's good. The closer you can get to 4-8, the better. But you know what? 2-4, hey, that's better than 1-2, right? You're almost hyperventilating at 1-2. Yeah. So the closer we can get to that 4-8 breath, that's what we're shooting for. And you can do this as long as you need. I recommend, if you're an athlete, if you care about the recovery process, and all athletes should, as soon as you get done working out, go do this for 5 minutes. Huh. And it puts you into that state of rest and digest, so you can actually start recovering immediately. There's been some studies that show that athletes they stay in this stress state. So all these stress hormones, all these things are still in their bodies for up to 5 hours after a major, like a game or a workout. Wow. That's time you could have been spending. First of all, a lot of people like to eat after they work out to try to fuel their muscle gains. Well, guess what? If you're not in the state to actually digest it, you're not in the state to use it.
Dang, that just, yep. I'm an eater. After I work out, I'm like, I'm so hungry. Give me that food. Get out of my way. Oh, man. So we're totally out of time, but I have to ask you this question anyway.
Sure.
So if you can do breath work to downregulate, you talk about activating in the book. Use that word activate. To me, I read, hey, wake the hell up, body. Like, so can you, it'd be a remedy for a depressive state?
Absolutely. And there's a whole chapter about how you can use superventilation as a disruptor. And I know we're out of time. Guys, make sure to read the book. But superventilation is a technique that can really disrupt negative cycles and dopamine feedback loops that put us into a depressed or anxious state. So they're really powerful. The thing about upregulating. So just a side note, and then I promise I'll stop. But this is something that my wife hates it whenever we're driving. But there's times whenever we're on a long drive. Maybe my family lives in Florida, so we come down from Indiana. Oh, okay. So maybe I remember the last time we were doing this, I was on Mount Eagle in the middle of the night, no coffee in sight, I really could have used a bump of caffeine. And so I started doing some augmented, some breath work. And it wasn't the kind, I'm not going to get dizzy and pass out, but I was like, I need to wake the hell up. And so it works. You can send the same signals that you would normally, what is caffeine, but it's putting you in that sympathetic state. Well, I can do that myself, and everybody can too. The nice thing about doing it by yourself with your breath is that you can go to sleep, pretty soon after. It's not going to have that half-life like caffeine has.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine you driving and doing that exercise. And
it looks weird. My wife has to put up with a lot. Yeah. I'll give her that.
Well, that's why I was thinking okay, for the purpose of our conversation, the down-regulating exercise could be most beneficial and applicable for the listeners because it is also the most anonymous potentially to do in public.
Yeah,
whereas the more activating breathwork exercises can draw some attention. So, but I did love your book. And thank you so much for this chat. I am so happy that we met because I feel like that was supposed to happen. And I will be promoting your book from the mountaintops.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really fun.
How can people follow you on social media? Where can they check out your information and all the things that you have going on?
Yeah. So if you check out, you go to Instagram, it's Jesse_Midwestern Method. I'm about to change it to just simply Jesse Coomer. So I'm at this cusp part of my branding, if you will. So how about just either look for Jesse Coomer, or you can look for Jesse_Midwestern Method. You can go to my website, midwesternmethod.com. And on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel called Midwestern Method. So I am Jesse of the Midwest, and I'm proud of it. You guys have all the beaches down there in Florida, but, we've got the corn here.
Yeah,
so,
you might want to work on that slogan there. That was pretty weak, I'm not going to lie.
It's not a great sales pitch.
It's not a great sales pitch.
We've got stuff here.
And it's great. Well, thank you again, Jesse. That was awesome. That's a wrap. Woo!
Are you still listening? Just kidding, of course you are. Since you're here, here's some ways you can support the show. Stalk me on social media, leave a review, share an episode with a friend, or check out my Teespring page for delightfully sarcastic apparel. Links are in the episode description.